Hi, everyone. This is Jason Burak of Wall Street for Main Street. Welcome back to another Wall Street for Main Street podcast interview. Today's special guest is a returning guest. He is a rising star in the financial podcast sector. He may have the most entertaining financial podcast with great rants and interesting guests. He is always good combination of laugh and information, and insightful guests. He started Quote the Raven Research, LLC. He writes articles on Seeking Alpha about a number of different types of companies and sectors. He's an options trader, and of course the popular QTR podcast, which is just kicking ass and taking names right now. Christopher Irons, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Jason. What's up? It's nice to be back with you again.
And congratulations on the success of your podcast. I mean, I know tons of people in the financial industry who are telling me, my God, this podcast is good. I can't believe I just found it.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I personally still can't believe that people listen to me kind of scream drunkenly into a microphone, but hey, man, whatever people are into, I'm down for that. You know, I appreciate it very much. I'm a little mystified myself about the whole thing, but, you know, I guess that's a good thing.
Well, have you listened to some of the regular podcasts and regular, stuff on CNBC and Bloomberg compared to the stuff you do? I mean, it's very refreshing.
Well, and that was part of what motivated me to do it, right? Actually, the one defining moment that motivated me to do a podcast, and I almost got to call Tim Seymour out in person last week, but he was at the event I was at, but he wasn't in the room that I was at this Benzinga Trader Summit last week. But the event that really motivated me to try my hand in whatever you want to call it, financial media, I don't know what you want to say, was when Tim Seymour was interviewing Bill Fleckenstein some years back, and they had him on Fast Money. And Fleckenstein, this was in the midst of 4 or 5 years, probably into the decade-long bull market that we're in now. And Fleckenstein had said to him that he was trying a bunch of shorts, but things weren't working, and so he was finding it difficult to get short. And Tim Seymour, tried to call him out on essentially what his stance has been, for as long as I've been listening to Fleckenstein, which is that central banking policies are going to be inevitable failures, and that these guys running these central banks don't have a clue as to what the hell they're doing. Even though they're faking it right now and kind of getting away with it to some degree. But Fleckenstein was trying to continue to make that point, and Tim Seymour started being a real asshole to him. And, he called him pathetic. He said, Bill, a lot of this stuff sounds really pathetic, because Seymour was, riding the equities wave, and these Keynesians and people that buy the bullshit that the central bankers are selling, they think that if you miss out on buying equities in an overvalued market and you miss out on a quote-unquote bull market for the last decade, instead of calling it, a crack-infused market, which is really what it is, that if you miss out on that, you're somehow wrong about the fact that the Fed doesn't know what it's talking about. And conflating the two, I think, is very dangerous, and I also think it's intellectually dishonest. You can be very right about central banks not having a fucking clue what they're doing. And at the same time, you can trade equities and make, 2, 3, 4 times your money over the course of a bull market, or not trade equities over the course of the decade-long bull market. But they're it doesn't have to be one or the other. So I was perturbed by Seymour's take on it. And he made some snarky little fucking comment to Fleckenstein. Oh, I bet you bought gold at the bottom too, he said, and just being an asshole about it. And I watched that many times since it happened. It was on YouTube, and I watched that clip probably like 50 or 100 times, because I watch all of Fleckenstein's videos and Peter Schiff and these guys. I listen to the guests that you have on your podcast. Anything that can really confirm my biases, right?
Yeah.
But I listened to that probably 50 times, 100 times. I just got fucking annoyed with it. And I'm like, why does that have to be the standard in the financial media? And most recently, one of the other things was Josh Brown made a post called "Perma Bears Are Ridiculous People." And the gist of the post was the same thing, right? Which is, you're an idiot if you're out there skeptical of the system and you think that the whole thing can't come crashing down at some point. And I think that there's only one way to be arrogant in the financial world. And it's not the people who say, hey, something could be wrong here. It's the people who say, hey, we definitely have it all 100% figured out. So Seymour was speaking at this event that I was speaking at last week. Peter Schiff was there also. I tried to actually call him out. I called his name while I was on stage, and I don't think he was in the room anymore. But the gist of my presentation, and to wrap up my very lengthy introduction here that I'm making, was that the arrogant position is thinking that these central banks know what they're doing and that they've got it all figured out. Well, here we are, Jason. We're stuck at fucking 2% interest rates. We can't go any higher because every quarter of a basis point now is like a fucking earthquake that registers a 10 on the Richter scales. There's aftershocks that run through the financial sector. They run through all of this outstanding debt that we have right now, which is all at record levels. So we're stuck, and the central banks are stuck. And the fucked up thing is we're not even really in any type of major kind of crunch now where we would need to lower interest rates. The fact that they're talking about it and they have no options now other than negative interest rate policy and printing a fuckload of money, which everybody seems to think that'll do nothing, but eventually that will catch up with us. That's frightening to me. And I don't want to have to fucking search for some little hidden shit on YouTube to find somebody at least acknowledge that viewpoint. And that's why I started a podcast.
And I think, the central bankers, Ben Bernanke won an award, Times Man of the Year, for quotes, air quotes here, saving us, right, from the crisis. And Danielle DiMartino Booth, who worked in the Dallas Federal Reserve, she's relayed some information that Ben Bernanke was so crazy with the TARP and the bailouts and the QE at some point at the height of the crisis in 2008-9 that he was telling the other central banks that they had to get on board, the other major central banks in Japan and the European Central Bank and the Bank of England, that they had to get with the program. I've heard from other sources that Ben Bernanke also bullied central bankers in emerging markets as well, that they were threatened too for if they tried to devalue their currencies or other things. So, these rule changes, all this, you use the word fuckery. I'm cussing here. I'm going to get in trouble for it, so my listeners are not going to like it. There are so many bad things going on behind the scenes that are not fair to the average person on Main Street that even financial professionals like Tim Seymour and others, they don't care. These guys making money, trading fast money, they don't care about the long-term picture, about how even though the stock market is going up, the real economy, the person on Main Street is getting killed with stagflation and taxes.
Well, and there's a huge impact on the middle class, right, and Main Street that people that don't really have too much financial sophistication don't understand. They don't understand how the inequality gap widens as a result of Fed policy, right? They don't get it. And that is one of the assets that the central bank has. That's what allows them to do what they're doing, right? The fact that people never stop to just ask a simple question like inflation. Why is it good when prices go up? That's a very simple question, right? Why is that a good thing? Why is it a good thing that you want things to cost more, right? People don't even stop to ask those simple questions, and it's not Main Street's fault. They've been handed this system that, it's interesting looking from the outside, looking from the outside in before I started to learn about this stuff and understand how it worked. You just kind of assume that the economic system and the central bankers know what they're doing. And 99% of people out there on Main Street kind of do assume that. They just assume, well, the government has it under control or the Fed has it under control. And that is frightening because if the government and the central banks are pulling the world's biggest con job right now, right, which they very well may be, if that's happening and if they're faking that they know all of the potential outcomes to all of the potential scenarios going forward running things the way that they do now, if they're faking that and they don't really know that, then we're fucked at some point. And many times, Jason, when these things go bust, like in 2008, and everybody's kind of looking around with these dumbfounded faces, like, "Oh, how did we get here? Oh, how did we get this? How did this happen?" You know, and then they have these stupid congressional hearings, and then you got to listen to a bunch of fucking Congress people ask questions. They don't know anything about economics. You know, we're always looking back, saying, "Oh, how did we miss it? How did we miss it? How did we miss it?" And if that is the case, if the case is that they're pulling this giant con over the eyes of everybody, Main Street not really understanding what's going on is arguably their biggest asset. And just to go back to what you were saying about Bernanke, you know, Peter Schiff says in one of his lectures, it's one of my favorite quotes. He said that after the crisis, Bernanke wrote a book called The Courage to Act. And Peter Schiff says they should have called it. Peter Schiff says they should have called it A Coward's Way Out, right? Because that's exactly what the fuck happened, right? It doesn't take me, you, or anybody, Jason, could have went in there and hit the big green button on the printing press. You know, we don't even need a printing press. I mean, back in the day, you actually had to print the money. Now you just fucking slam a couple buttons on a computer and you inject, you know, $1 trillion or $2 trillion into the system, right? So it doesn't take anything to do that. And you could go to your local Walmart and pull out the 90-year-old Walmart greeter from Walmart and have him run the Fed and say, "Hey, Walter, you know, just need you to hit this button here and you're going to ward off a financial crisis." It doesn't take any type of fucking intellectual, you know-how. It doesn't, you know, to print money and to bail out the system. That's the easy way out, right? So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I feel like the Fed is like the kids, if you're a parent and your kids want like a puppy, right? And then the kid is supposed to have the responsibility of cleaning up after the puppy when it goes to the bathroom, poops inside the house or whatever. And instead of actually picking up the poop and cleaning it up, the Fed is like the kid that just puts newspaper on top of the poop all the time and or sweeps it under the rug and just says, "Mommy and Daddy, look, I cleaned it up." I just feel like it's that way. So any mess or crisis that the Fed creates or causes collateral damage or misallocated capital or credit bubbles or all these things, their solution is, okay, well, we'll just change the bankruptcy rules, or we'll just make sure that the shale oil junk funds don't go bankrupt, or we'll just print more money. And that's like the solution to every single problem. But there's a limit to that because look at I didn't want to talk about politics this early, but the Democrat debates that have been on the last couple of days, and their solution, I'm using air quotes, to all the problems that we have in society is tens of trillions of dollars in more spending.
Yeah, it's wild, man. You know, look, we can only print so much money before the currency starts to, you know, drift away from us, which will happen at some point. We can only raise taxes so high. We can only lower interest rates so low. These people think that all these things, you know, they don't even consider that these variables at some point are not going to want to be fucked with. And it's not going to be our decision, right? When interest rates will hit a point where they're so low and we're going to see some shit we've never seen before, okay? We are on an unprecedented journey in monetary policy here, right? I mean, you think Japan is like a problem? Wait till you see what happens when this happens on a larger scale. And like these, you know, tax rates can only go so high, right? I mean, most basic, most people with basic understandings of economics know about the Laffer Curve, right? But like, you know, just think about it on a larger scale, right? How much can we take from the wealthy, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to take 100%? Do you want to take 99%? Like, what would happen in that case, right? Well, do you want to print 20 trillion, 50 trillion? Within the first 20 minutes of that debate last night, Jason, fucking Bernie Sanders had already proposed. I mean, we weren't in the debate 20 minutes, and these guys were in the trillions in terms of what they were proposing doing. This Ilhan Omar, okay, talk about fucking clueless. She was on Twitter the other day. She retweeted, you know, the national student debt total, which is, I think, $1.5 trillion, and just retweeted it with like, yeah, and we're just going to cancel all of it. That's all she said. We're just going to cancel it all. Like, that shows no economic intelligence whatsoever. You don't just fucking monetize and just go ahead.
It'll also create resentment in society, because what if you or me busted our asses to pay off all our student loan debt?
That's a fucking understatement. That is a fucking understatement, resentment. What about everybody, Jason, that has paid off their loans? I mean, you're making a great point, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but, like, it's fucking comical, right? Say you're a dentist, okay, and you just paid off $200,000 in student loans, and you make your last payment a week before they come out and say, well, you know what, everybody's just, the rest of it's canceled. Everybody have a nice day. Resentment is an understatement. It will be a fucking disaster, and it'll be horribly offensive to the people that did the right thing, and it'll be rewarding to those who reneged on their obligations. It's like, why even have debt at that point? And what stops the government from paying off your credit cards, your mortgage? Why even have debt at that point? Well, because everybody needs to have an education. Well, it's like, well, what about the fucking people that took out these student loans? And trust me, all you got to do is turn on the TV or read the news, because I see story after story after story, and I know people that have taken out student loans. They took the money, Jason, and they fucked off with it. They didn't even go to school. They fucking bought a car. They never even bought books. You know what I mean? They were using it to pay their rent. All you got to do is turn on an episode of Judge Judy. Every other episode, the defendant is somebody, well, I was going to school to be a nurse, and, then I took my student loan payments and I bought a car with it. It's like, so people aren't even using it for education. And those are the people that the Democrats want to reward, okay? They want to reward that behavior. And it's absurd. It is ridiculous. And it's insulting and offensive to people that have done the right thing and have paid off their obligations.
Amen, brother. And I've studied a ton of history, and I could tell you there is no limit, especially to the government, the empire that is in power. There is almost no limit to the amount of endless promises that a politician will make to buy votes.
And that's what was really sickening about this Democratic debate. I mean, there were some people on those stages that I can tolerate. I'm not Mr. fucking anti-Democrat or Mr. bipartisan. I'm a libertarian. I can find people on both sides of the aisle that I think are less awful than others. With that being said, these last two Democratic debates were clearly very clear competitions to see who could go the furthest left and who could give away the most free shit. Okay, last night, Jason, the candidates are talking about giving free health care, all right, which of course is not free. It's being paid for by me and by you and your listeners and anybody else who pays taxes and makes good on that obligation. Free health care and free college to people that are in the country illegally, undocumented people, okay, illegally. And because the Democrats have juxtaposed this idea of if you're against illegal immigration, by the way, the key word again is illegal, as in against the law, right? The Democrats have kind of mashed these things together to make it if you're against illegal immigration, somehow you're some kind of racist, all right, when really all it means is you respect the rule of law, right? They want taxpayers to now provide social services for people that are in the country illegally who are not paying taxes themselves, okay? You don't have to be Mr. Right-Wing. You don't have to be Mr. Libertarian. I'm sure there are Democrats that, if they understood this concept in its entirety, probably couldn't get behind it.
There are let me chime in here, Chris. There are moderate Democrats, and they don't want this stuff, but they're being kicked out of the party. They're not radical enough. They're being called out in public. They're being made fun of. They're being bullied, ostracized, and they're being kicked out of the party, a lot of the moderate Democrats who don't want a lot of this stuff. But let me talk about something purely mathematical, okay? So if you have a situation where most American citizens, and I did a video on this about how quickly the U.S. national debt's growing, not even half the population of the U.S. pays a full income tax. You have the American citizen who's not even paying a full income tax. You let in all these people who are illegal, and you promise them all these free things. You have all these people, American citizens, who are not paying taxes and getting all these free things. It is a mathematical certainty that at some point the country will go bankrupt, like complete and totally bankrupt, and that even money printing or any other scheme that they can come up with will only accelerate the problem.
Yeah, well, we're already $23 trillion in debt, right? If the country was a company and you were looking at its balance sheet, right, that debt level would be very alarming. So, the country may already be bankrupt and we just don't know it yet. I mean, you could argue that the incoming revenue stream from taxes that we collect is going to be our IV drip that keeps us alive. But of course, like we can't, Jason, this country can't even pay Social Security benefits to the people that have paid into it. All right, Social Security is going to go bust in like 15 years or whatever it is. All right, why don't we worry about that problem before we start giving away health care and college for free to people that are not in the country legally and not paying taxes? I mean, that's unbelievable to me. I'm not some dehumanizing like asshole. Okay, I'm against separating parents from their children at the border. I'm against having horrible conditions at these detention camps where they keep people at the border. I'm against those things. I'm not some I don't want to kill these people. I don't want, I'm against those things. But what I can't understand is putting those people who are entering the country illegally before the citizens that live here. I mean, I understand you can't change the circumstances of where you were born. I understand that you can't change your environment and where you were born. I understand that, the U.S. ostensibly has, the top spot in terms of our resources and the opportunity of what we can offer as a country. I understand those things, but to just adopt the idea that we're going to be able to take care of everybody that comes into the country illegally and make that a priority when there's veterans, people that are homeless, who fought for the country, who went to, I literally just drove past a Walmart before, which is why I made that joke about Walmart, and there was a guy sitting outside collecting money for homeless veterans, okay? That needs to be fucking priority one. Once we get everybody in the country that has served the country and is a citizen on good footing, and those people are taken care of and given the bare minimum social services that they deserve for risking their lives so that we could have everything that we have, then we can start to consider, all right, should we open up our borders a little bit more? Should we let a few more people in? Should we, but to prioritize that as if there's some crisis, as if that's the crisis right now in this country, all it is, Jason, is it's tugging to the emotional heartstrings of voters. It's virtue signaling. It's trying to put this altruistic kind of motivation out there to pull at people's heartstrings, and people that don't have sensibility, especially economic sensibility, but generally common sense, they fail to kind of understand why that is so out of whack. Jason, it's like people that put these signs in their front lawn, right? And I walked past about 50 of them in West Philly yesterday, right? They all say, hate has no home here. All people are welcome in our home, whatever. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got a social justice sign in their front lawn. And there was this great YouTube video where they went out and started talking to these people that had these signs on their front lawn. They said, all right, would you take in a refugee personally? And everybody's like, yeah, I would, And then so they bring a guy, and they're like, here you go. This guy's from fucking wherever, Bosnia and Herzegovina or wherever he's from. He needs a place to stay. And everybody's like, well, I don't want to, And the rest of the people said, well, they wouldn't do it. So it's just nonsense. It's unrealistic nonsense, and it's people posturing in one way and doing another thing, and it's virtue signaling. And everybody needs a cold, hard dose of reality. And that's why I'm glad you have a podcast.
Thank you, man. And if I wanted to put on my tinfoil hat for conspiracy theory for a second or two, I would also say that this was planned. The Soviet Union had planned things like this division. They wanted Americans to fight among race, age, gender, class. They wanted infighting like this. This was one of the Soviet Union's main plans to subvert the U.S. and destroy it from the inside out. And the Soviet Union collapsed long before the U.S. did, but I'm starting to see things accelerate from the inside out with the U.S., where, just the infighting and the hypocrisy of it all. And the other conspiratorial thing that I'm seeing, it's almost, Chris, as if like a lot of these Democrat politicians, now I know they're into modern monetary theory, which is not really modern at all. It's like the crank stuff. It's even worse than Keynesian economics. It's John Locke crankery, quackery. But the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory stuff is like they want to intentionally accelerate the collapse and bankruptcy of the U.S. So they want to totally, any which way that they can totally destroy the sovereignty of the U.S., that they can bankrupt the U.S. It's almost as if they want to accelerate the collapse with all the promises and crazy policy things that they're making. Not that the Republicans are better. I don't trust either party at this point because Republicans want war now too.
These bimbos that are advocating for modern monetary theory, okay, they don't even know how big this stick of dynamite they're fucking around with is. And that's the problem, okay? They don't even know that they're holding a stick of dynamite with this modern monetary theory. For them, it's not even a theory. I don't even know why they call it that. For them, it's just print more money. The basic tenet of modern monetary theory is we can print as much money as we want, so we should be able to do whatever we want, whenever we want, and fund anything we want. The United States has an unlimited amount of money, and that is one of the most asinine things you could possibly think, and it speaks to how little people understand basic economics, right? I mean, to inflate the money supply in the way that these people are advocating would ensure hyperinflation. It would ensure more loss of purchasing power of the dollar. It would cripple the purchasing power of money that people have already saved. It would be a total disaster, and there's many other unintended consequences that an actual economist, I'm sure, could tell you about, but I can't because basically I'm an ex-bartender from Philadelphia that, has only been following this shit for 6 or 7 years. But the point of the matter is they don't even know, okay? They don't even know. To them, it's a one-dimensional problem of we don't have any money, and this is their fucking one-dimensional solution. Print more. And that's it. And there's no other variables. There's no other consequences. There's nothing else to consider. For them, it's that simple, and that is fucking frightening. It is absolutely frightening. Sorry, go ahead.
I got a funny story about this, actually, because Austrian school economists and the Mises Institute have been debating MMT people for a decade, and the mainstream financial media didn't really cover this for a long time. So when I was a stockbroker in IAR, and then I got fired, and I was waking up during the 2008 financial crisis and the aftermath in 2009 during QE and TARP, I started researching a bunch of different things on the internet like Peter Schiff and MMT, and I became friends for a couple years with very hardcore MMT people, and they were very socialist, very Marxist, a mix of those, and some of them who were in Canada or the U.S. didn't want anyone making a profit on anything at all. They thought all profit was evil, but they were telling me, Chris, that the model, the future of MMT, that will be the shining beacon on the hill for the success of MMT in the future will be China. So they kept repeating this. And I was like, at the time, China was, building infrastructure. We didn't hear about the stuff about the China hustle. We didn't hear about all the reverse merger frauds. We didn't know about this stuff yet. Everyone just thought, oh my God, China's building all this beautiful infrastructure. China's moving people from the farmlands into their version of the middle class in the cities, and they're manufacturing stuff. So, in reality, the stuff that's coming out of China, the details of the reality is far different than this vision that the MMT people had planned. I'm sure they're going to disavow China now, as China has problems with credit bubble and fraud and a real estate bubble and trillions of dollars in misallocations of capital and this banking system crisis that I've been covering. I'm sure that the MMT people, the ones who were saying China was the model, they will disavow this thing immediately, just like how socialists have all, like Bernie Sanders and Joseph Stiglitz and Jeremy Corbyn, have all disavowed Venezuela after praising it with Hugo Chavez and calling it the best example of socialism only 10 years ago.
Right. Well, and one of the big problems is when you're personally, and I'm not a not a historian, and I'm certainly not an expert on any ism, right? But I think one of the big problems with this new kind of Marxist thinking here that has come from the left, and it's trendy to be Marxist now, right? I just saw, maybe it was you, somebody sent me something the other day that was a magazine article in like Vogue.
That was me.
You know, was it you? Yeah, and it was like
they do it every 6 months. They do it every 6 months, dude. It's recycled. They recycle like a similar story every 6 to 12 months. And the New York Times even ran a ridiculous article like 2 or 3 years ago about how socialist women in the Soviet Union had better sex than like freer women now here in the United States.
Well, let's just talk about like socialism and Marxism, right? And the problem is that, again, here we are thinking with our hearts and not with our heads, okay? Altruistic motives behind advocating for Marxism and socialism, they make sense, right? I mean, I'm as anti-Marxist, anti-socialist probably as you could get, unless somebody wants to change my mind on that. But the idea that, you know, I understand why they have appeal to people that are not educated on what their effects have been historically. And I think one of the other big problems is when you look around, okay, right now I'm sitting at a shopping mall having this conversation with you outside my gym where I'm going to jiu-jitsu, and it's like one of these mini malls, right? It's got like 100 shops in it. So as I'm talking to you, I'm watching people come in and out with their, you know, and everybody's happy. Everybody's got an SUV, everybody's smiling, everybody's carrying bags of shit. And that's pretty, you know, everything that we have right now, Jason, our quality of life, the car you drive in, the house you live in, whatever your listeners have, whether you're sitting in a one-bedroom apartment with just a mattress on the ground eating a bag of fucking potato chips, or you're sitting in a multi-million-dollar mansion and you're driving a Benz, the whole system, the whole getup, our general quality of life in this country has not been a result of socialism. It's been a result of capitalism, right? And people are so content with the system now that they feel like they almost forget it. They almost forget that that's what got us here. And it's inconceivable to people that if we made some type of dramatic shift to communism or to socialism, that our quality of life as it exists today would deteriorate significantly. And it's something very difficult to ask people to envision when they're walking in and out of Walmart buying fucking, you know, buying TVs and buying, you know, computers and having a good grand old time and buying cookies and getting ready to go home and pig out and drink beer. Like, life's pretty fucking good, right? It's difficult to get those people to envision what could happen under a socialist regime, under a Marxist regime. So people don't think that way. They don't think critically about it, Jason. They're thinking about the altruistic kind of benefits of it. I was just talking to a guy from Chile, you know, a couple months ago who had met some people from Venezuela and was telling me what they thought, right? And he was basically telling me nobody conceived that this could have happened in Venezuela 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And he was telling me about, you know, some of the political changes in Chile, saying, you know, growing up, nobody could have conceived that this or that was going to happen, but it did. And that's the same case here, right? These people are blind. They don't know what they're advocating for.
They're also brainwashed. They're brainwashed too. So they're either ignorant or stupid or brainwashed, a combination of the three. Chris, I can tell you the mainstream media here in the United States will not cover the Yellow Vest protests in France, probably because the French government asked them not to. So the European Union, you know, you're talking about socialism. If people would have been paying attention to the problems in the European Union now, they have more socialism than the U.S. But the U.S. is headed down that deep, dark path now, very similar to what happened in the European Union.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you, and I think that censorship in general is becoming an issue, a real issue. Now, these companies that are choosing to censor what people say, the social media companies and stuff like that, that's a very slippery slope. And you can watch companies slip down that slope, right? So first Twitter was censoring some things, and then, okay, this is hate speech, whatever. Now they're sliding down the slope a little more, saying, well, we're going to allow some content that breaks our rules, but we're going to notify people that it breaks our rules. And even like YouTube now, they have these disclaimers under their videos. If you watch like an RT video, it says, RT is a branch of the Russian government. Or if you watch the Israel Times, it says, the Israel Times is a branch of Israel, or whatever. They have all these disclaimers and stuff, and it's becoming a slippery slope, and these social media entities are starting to slide down it. And I think for them, they're going to make life a lot more difficult for themselves than need be, because the resources that are going to need to go into policing the content using all of these esoteric and kind of crazy rules that they've come up with are going to require a lot of capital, and they require a lot of resources. But eventually it's going to start to drive people away, though, too, and the market is going to produce another social media entity that's going to allow people to say whatever the fuck they want to say. I mean, and that's one of the tenets that the country was founded on, right, was the idea of free speech. And I always like the saying of, the speech that you disagree with is the most important speech to protect, right, to honor the First Amendment, right? And so the censorship on the social media, I think, is worrisome. I understand removing targeted harassment. I do. I really do. I get that. I understand going after people for, it would be like if somebody walked out of a store and you just started following them to their car in the parking lot, just walking 1 inch behind them, just like, you motherfucking asshole, and you just blah, 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 just got in their face and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, like, that's disorderly conduct. Plus, you're going to get fucking punched, right? Like, I understand trying to prevent that type of hate speech if you want to try and kind of, but this has drifted, Jason, into policing any idea on the right side of the aisle. That's what it seems to me. This Project Veritas coming out with, labeling Ben Shapiro a Nazi. Ben Shapiro, the guy's he's Jewish. You know what I mean? Like, he's a practice. I think he's like an Orthodox. No, I don't know if he's Orthodox. He wears the skull cap. I mean, his name's Shapiro. Like, they're calling this guy a Nazi. Like, it has just gone off the deep end, and it looks as though it's only going to get worse until either another option pops up or somebody fucks up so badly that it makes a huge headline. But who knows, man? As long as people on the left are in control of all of the technology companies, and that's certainly the case in Silicon Valley, who knows when that's going to get better, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to take quite a few more years before more competition comes along. Maybe if their patents got pulled, it would accelerate the competition coming on. But speaking of Silicon Valley censorship, Elon Musk and Tesla Motors, isn't he getting his buddies on Twitter and elsewhere? He's getting people censored and silenced, right? So there's crazy amounts of stuff that has been happening with Tesla Motors. I can't follow all the stories like some of the guests that you interview, and you interview some of the smartest short sellers in financial professionals, whether that's Montana Skeptic, Carson Block, what was it, Aaron Greenspan, the legal guy who was going through the Tesla lawsuit. So you've interviewed a bunch of the well-known ones.
Yes, I have. And the Tesla thing is interesting because you start to see these tweets over the last couple of weeks of people trying to tweet out this shared spreadsheet that they have of all of these deaths that have been associated with Tesla vehicles. There's a spreadsheet going around, and it's got this raw data in it that basically has the date of Tesla accidents, and it has the circumstances surrounding the accident, and a couple other things, just basically trying to document all the accidents that have occurred in Teslas, I guess to try and parse out which ones maybe were involving autopilot or whatever. But people reporting last week that they're not able to tweet it out. And then somebody actually said that Twitter had informed them that they had blocked it, or that they had there was some kind of error that was preventing them from tweeting it out. Now, I don't know if Elon Musk is calling up Jack Dorsey saying, hey, can you fucking stop this? You know, I don't know if it's that deep, but it needs to be watched closely, because on the left side of the argument, Jason, would say, here's Elon Musk, he's trying to do a good thing, save the world, climate change, whatever, and people that are detractors to him shouldn't even be allowed to have any type of free speech, shouldn't be allowed to put it on the platform because they're driving against the evolution of human society. And on the right side of the spectrum, you have the argument that Elon Musk could potentially be running an enormous fraud, financial fraud. He has been accused by fraud by the Securities and Exchange Commission. His company burns through billions of dollars, okay? It has never been consistently profitable. And somebody needs to look at that from a skeptical angle. Meanwhile, you do have a lot of accidents involving Tesla and involving autopilot, right? So why can't social media embrace having all of those viewpoints, from the far right that Elon Musk is he's a fraudster, to the far left that he's Jesus Christ reincarnate and is saving the planet? Why can't we embrace everything in between there? And I guarantee you the majority of people think that Elon Musk is the second coming, all right? The majority is not out there saying, oh, Elon Musk is, running a fraud. So even this 10% or 15% or 20% or whatever it is that's come out skeptical has got people's kind of panties in a bunch here a little bit. And that's how you know that type of speech is important, man, when it starts to make that kind of impact. So I don't know if Twitter is censoring things directly as they relate to Tesla. They certainly have suspended, I think, some people that have been critical of Musk, but I don't know the details, so I don't really want to go too far into it. I just know that.
Well, I was just doing a transition then to Tesla then, because it seems like that there's a lot. The company, the way Elon Musk and the company act, they act like bullies. Because look, if anyone has something that's anything critical or someone critical of the company, Elon's looking to pick on people. And it's been this way for years. And the mainstream media, mainstream financial media didn't cover this for a while, but now it's finally starting to come to light. And the Tesla Q stuff, Chris, it seems like this is like a kind of a detective crime novel where you get some clues and then the Tesla Q community starts researching this stuff like crazy, and then they go off on a tangent because there's another piece of evidence or clues. It's kind of like that we're watching a detective crime novel play out online on social media in real time.
Well, this stuff of Elon Musk following, I read the one story where an employee that had been fired or who had quit went back to get his things and left the plant and was just saying goodbye or whatever, and Elon Musk followed him out of the plant and said, I'm going to nuke you, to him, that kind of nonsense horse shit that, by the way, Elon Musk would never be doing if he wasn't surrounded by fucking security, right, at his plant. I mean, the guy he's a very smart person, and there's a lot of nice things I could say about him, but he is a dork. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to go out and physically intimidate anybody. He's kind of this doughy, amorphous, kind of nerdy, he's not an intimidating person. And this idea that he's doing that and kind of bullying people and hacking into, one of the other whistleblowers said that he had hacked into somebody's email and personal phone conversations that was an employee. That's fucking nonsense and horseshit. But, look, as a free market guy, I just think the employees just say, you know what, I don't want to work for you anymore. It's at-will employment, and you can leave. And I think that this guy that left and had to deal with this situation was probably making the right move by leaving the company to begin with. And also, there's been a mass exodus of employees from this company. We've seen, tens, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of executives leave this company over the last couple of years. High-level executives. The head of production of the Fremont factory just left last week. I mean, so that tells you something about the tone at the top of this company. Everything I've seen about this company from the outside looking in, with my limited experience of working at public companies and analyzing public companies and just general, sociological knowledge from being a bartender and talking to 150,000 people a day, everything I see from the outside looking in looks as though there is major dysfunction in terms of the organization, in terms of how the company's run, in terms of the company culture. So that's what all these executive departures tell me. But whether or not that's the case remains to be seen.
Well, there's almost 100% turnover in the accounting department, so that's a big red flag because, I mean, if you're an executive or higher upper management in the accounting and finance department, normally you're going to want to stick around at least for a few years to get your stock options to vest, so they're sacrificing their stock options package to leave.
That's one of the biggest clues, right? That's one of the biggest clues. I think that's a fantastic point that you just made, right? But who's going to surrender potentially millions of dollars worth of equity options if this company is just, you know, if it's about to enter its good old days, you know, if it's about to hit peak productivity? You don't just
Kathy
leave.
Wood, 4,000 per share price target, right? If she's actually going to be right and the shares are going to go there, someone would be dumb to miss a 10-bagger.
Well, you know, look, I don't even know. I don't really even know what to say about that. You know, I mean, since she,
you know, I'm joking, call, right? I don't.
Of course, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I think since you've made that call, the stock's gone from the mid 350s. I think it trades with a 220 handle now. So I mean, I don't know. Some people can't be helped. Her model that she put online, they put out like a crowdsourced financial model, was just absolutely eviscerated by real analysts and real CFAs that got a chance to look at it.
Kathy Wood and her price target, I think she's hitched her wagon to Tesla, and she's basically, to use the poker analogy, she's all in on this. So there's no backing away from calls or distancing herself or doing what the Morgan Stanley analyst Adam Jonas did, where, you know, he's now saying that it's a restructuring story, and he was very bullish Tesla, right? And now he's basically changed his tune on that.
Yeah, well, it's certainly going to affect her credibility going forward, right? I mean, you could argue that this is the hallmark call of her career, right? It's certainly the one that has gotten her on CNBC. It's certainly the one that has kind of put her out there into the mainstream. So, I mean, look, just as many on the skeptical side of the company are betting against it and kind of risking their reputation like that, I think she's doing the same. So if this thing turns out to be a fucking donut, you know, I'm not sure it's going to be easy for her to raise money in the future. But then again, there's a lot of dumb fucking money out there too. So I could be very wrong.
So let me ask you then about these emails, these Tesla corporate emails that are being leaked, and I'm using air quotes, to favorable pro-Tesla people inside the mainstream financial media. Is this just a way for Elon Musk to get around the SEC, for him to give them the middle finger, and for him to start trying to control the narrative? So anytime there's like bad news coming out that's bad for Tesla stock, it always seemed like there's in the last month or so, like a new leaked email that has more positive news.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly what's going on. I mean, I can't prove it, and I don't have any evidence, so I will say those things up front. But, you know, mysteriously, after Musk isn't able to tweet out operational and business updates anymore, all of a sudden internal company emails start leaking daily, weekly, monthly to the media that, you know, mostly the media that is supportive of Tesla's narrative, right? I think occasionally things have been leaked to CNBC, who you can argue has been supportive or maybe more towards neutral to some degree, but actually they've been quite supportive. But Electric and Inside EVs and Clean Technica and all these fucking happy green energy blogs, they all seem to be getting leaked emails from Elon Musk. And the content is always, things are great, by the way, too, Jason. There's never any leaked emails going around saying, hey, this is going to be a shit quarter. Every email is like, wow, we're just on the verge of delivery record. Oh, we're almost at the delivery record. Q2, we're just about going to make it, you know, like, and then of course we'll know the reality when the company has to report results. You're not going to be able to fuck with them. I mean, unless you're committing egregious fraud, which I don't think they're going to do. But it was like when Musk said on the Q1 call, we might to potential investors, he said something to the degree of, oh, you know, we're going to post a slight loss or something in Q1, and then they posted like a $700 million loss. It's like, yeah, you know, so I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happens for Q2. They say, oh, we're just going to miss our deliveries record, you know, and then they miss it by 50%. That would not surprise me. But yeah, I mean, personally, my personal opinion is that that's exactly what's happening. These leaked emails are being used as an end around the SEC's mandate of his Twitter sitter and not being able to tweet out material non-public information or material information or company updates via his Twitter.
Yeah, he's desperate to control the narrative. So anytime there's too much bad news, there's probably going to be, until this is stopped, there's probably going to be more leaked emails coming. But the more I learn about Tesla, and I've been following your podcast now for over a year, and it's just excellent with a lot of the coverage there and the stuff I see on Twitter from a lot of the other financial professionals that have been doing this a long time. When people look into Tesla, they are bad. One hedge fund manager talked to me and said, I think the only time Tesla was profitable right in Q4 2018 was because they stiffed Panasonic. They didn't pay them $2 billion. So Panasonic is having, who makes all their batteries and has the intellectual property on their batteries, Panasonic is in financial trouble now. Tesla can't pay their bills. Tesla seems like these deadbeats. You interviewed Aaron Greenspan, and he said that there's on his Twitter, his company Twitter, that there's 22 lawsuits from part suppliers of Tesla that have not been paid. So Tesla doesn't sound like this company that's saving the world. It sounds like more like Donald Trump when he was a commercial real estate developer, that he's basically like intentionally not paying the little guys. He's acting like a deadbeat, almost like the Venezuelan government for oil and part suppliers.
Well, and now we see the headline this past week was that Tesla was looking into making their own battery cells now. And they're pitching that as kind of, it's a way to save money. But you can't help but wonder whether or not that would be happening if the relationship with Panasonic was going well. I mean, that relationship has already kind of gone awry because Panasonic came out a couple of months ago and said that they're not going to be investing in the gigafactories anymore. So you know that relationship isn't really, it's not doing fantastic at this point. And then, looking at the Tesla now making their own, if that's what it appears from the outside. That's excuse me, it's exactly what it appears to look like. So I don't think it's any coincidence that they're making their own battery cells now. And we'll see. We'll see how many allies and how many suppliers and how many service centers that work with them and how many governments will be left to stand by the side of this company once they continue to renege on obligations, or, just as people start to kind of figure out. Every day, Jason, somebody that owns a Tesla tries to call for service and get a tire changed, or, they have a software malfunction. And every day I feel like I see posts on Twitter. I've been on hold for an hour, 2 hours. Nobody's getting back to me. I mean, the company has laid off so many people and they've misallocated so many resources that, they might be able to get you the car that you ordered, maybe not profitably, but they might be able to get it to you. But then from there, you're on your own, right? If you live out where I live, what do you do if your Tesla breaks down? Well, I'm not bringing it to the garage that I normally go to because they don't have the shit that they need to deal with those cars. They don't have they're not a Tesla authorized service center. I don't have a Tesla dealership anywhere near me. Fuck, I don't even have a charger. I don't even have a supercharger within, 10 miles. I think the closest one's in Bluebell, which I think is 10 miles from me. So even getting to the charger and back is going to cost me 20 miles of range. And I don't know, man. I think people are being bludgeoned by that reality after purchasing these vehicles. And I think as that kind of starts to permeate its way through the company's once excitable customer base, that many people will not be customers, repeat customers, but rather may look to, if they want to go down the electric vehicle road, may want to look to companies like Audi or Jaguar, who are producing, even Hyundai with the Kona, producing EVs, Chevy with the Bolt, Nissan, cars that are priced similarly but have reliability. They have a warranty that means a warranty, not a warranty that's going to mean fuck all when something, breaks on your car. So I think
charging stations at the dealership. There'll be charging stations at the dealership too, right?
Well, there will be dealerships. Tesla was like, we don't want to do the dealership model. We're disrupting things. It's like the industry's doing the dealership model for a fucking reason, okay? It's a capital-intensive, low-margin business, the auto industry. Like, the best thing Tesla could have done was adopt all of the best practices in the industry and then tried to start a car company using them. But you don't disrupt an industry that's been around for 150 years where, you know, every single company has hired consultants and employees and analysts to try to eke every single basis point of margin out of every single point in the vehicle selling process. I mean, they have it down to a science, literally. So it's not a field you can go in and just disrupt because, hey, you know, I started PayPal, so look, I made something, so now I'm going to change the automotive sales landscape. That's just asinine. It shows you what this guy's line of thinking is.
And they had years of no competition and didn't make profits. And now the competition, like you said, you named some of them, is just starting to come. And normally, if there's any type of competition, and most people don't understand this about capitalism competition, it is beneficial deflation for the consumer. So it means lowering of prices. Right. It is good. So the competition also will erode margins. So the margins, their gross margins and their other margins, they don't have a net profit margin because they're not profitable. But
right.
But their gross margins and their other margins, their operating margins, those things are going to be eroded very quickly as you have all this competition, especially in the European Union, because there's laws there that are mandating more electric vehicles. Those are going to just, the competition is going to hurt them. Even if the competition doesn't win, it's still going to hurt them.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're 100% right. And, you know, again, just in government overreach commentary, these governments requiring that people buy electric vehicles or offering these incentives to electric vehicles, I understand the motivation, but at some point we have to stop that as well and just, you know, allow the market to work, right? People that are concerned about the environment will start to drift from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles eventually. But, you know, for the government to just come out and feel as though they've got to spend to entice people to buy electric vehicles is just another act of stupidity. You know, I'll even try to put on it somewhat of a liberal hat and say I think it's okay to kind of get things started, to kind of get that movement started, to motivate. Because the one thing you could argue that Tesla did was they forced conventional automakers to start to take electric vehicles seriously. And no matter how much money they lose, and believe me, they're losing a lot, you could argue that that's a good thing, right? I don't really care personally, but some people would argue. But then the government feeling like they've got to kind of keep this going and that it's their job to make sure that these things sell, I think is, you know, it's just more government micromanagement, more government interference into people's everyday lives. And I think the less of that we get, the better. And that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated situation. There's a documentary out called Who Killed the Electric Car, and there's other resources out there that people can take a look at. Like, basically, the electric cars were about even with the internal combustion gasoline engine like 130 years ago approximately, and then all of a sudden they just lost that rate. But we don't have time to discuss that on this podcast. But, Chris, as we wrap things up here, we didn't get to discuss the unicorn IPOs and your thoughts on like Beyond Meat and some of these other companies. I wanted to ask you about Overstock too, and the stock does look cheap now, at least on some valuation metrics. It was at $87 a share at one point in January of 2018, and it's crashed down a lot. So there could be opportunities there considering their holdings in T0 and Medici Ventures. And we didn't get to talk about, unfortunately, due to time, gold and the China trade war with Huawei today either.
Well, I'll just touch on them all real quick. I still own Overstock. It's been a huge loser for me. I've owned it since the 60s, I think. Admittedly, I've lost on it. I rebought some in the single digits. I bought it all the way down also from 60, so I've been constantly losing on it. Once it got under 10, I took a little bit more of a position. It's basically a call option on whether or not their blockchain ventures and their T0 crypto platform is going to pan out, and whether or not they're going to be able to sell their legacy retail
business, right?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. So I think the company has like a $600 million cap right now, or $700 million cap. People are tossing around $500 million to $1 billion if they get that thing sold. Then plus you got a free call option on T0 and Medici, which are all admittedly kind of call options. And so I think down here at 9, 10, 11, it's way more attractive, obviously, than it was at the 60s. You know, obviously I got it wrong buying it that high, but I do still own it, despite all of the shit that I'm getting on Twitter and other places from people who think that I'm some type of stock promoter for owning the stock, which is ridiculous. So gold, I own gold. I'm going to plan on buying gold probably for the rest of my life. I think the break over 1,400 is a big deal. We're at 6-year highs in gold right now. I've been buying it aggressively as it has continued to go up. So I'm not taking profits here. I think gold has a long-ass way to go. And look, man, I mean, I'm one of those guys that thinks gold is really the only real money. So that'll tell you everything you need to know. I own some silver also because the gold-silver ratio is at really historic highs here at 91 or 92. Fleckenstein doesn't agree with that. He thinks that looking at that ratio is a way to lose money. Schiff is on the other side of the story. I just had a couple drinks with Peter Schiff last week when I saw him in New York City. You know, he likes silver here. He thinks that if gold doubles, silver's going to be a 4, 5, 6x. I think it's only a matter of time until gold does double and then goes beyond that, especially with these asinine monetary theories that we have. And just, you know, I made a joke the other night that gold was rallying as the Democrats were debating, because the futures were actually rallying. Every time one of these people came up with these stupid propositions of ways to spend another $1 trillion, it felt like it was ticking up. So I made this joke that the metals market knows exactly how much money is going to be printed in the future. So I really feel like gold is the only real money. The only thing you need to know about gold is that central banks hold it in reserve. That is it. You know, it's fucking do as I say, not as I do from the central banks when they say, oh, you know, you don't need to own gold. Or, you know, Bernanke described it as or one of the guys described it as a pet rock or something. You know, look, the only thing you need to know is they're buying it. And they're buying it for a reason, all right? And if they're the fucking people that are in charge and that's what they're buying, I want to own it too. That tells me everything I need to know. And then with Huawei, you know, I was watching a debate today on whether or not the United States should restrict Huawei further going forward. And I think that I think Huawei is a matter of national security. I think given what has come out about them over the last 2 years, the indisputable evidence that they have stolen technology and used espionage and spying to steal technologies from companies like T-Mobile and Motorola, I think was another one that I read, and that they're engaged in some really nefarious business practices. And this recent article, Jason, that has come to light that they're tied in with the Chinese government, which we knew, but also the Chinese military. Okay, that tells you everything you need to know. I don't want their fucking products in the United States. I don't want them on my I don't want them in my house. I don't want them in my router. I don't want them in my computer. I don't want them in the broader infrastructure that everybody is using to make cell phone calls, things of that nature. That's everything that you should know about Huawei. China has been ripping the United States off for a long time. All you got to do is watch the movie The China Hustle if you want a quick 2-hour introduction as to how, you know, the Chinese have built retail American investors out of hundreds of billions of dollars, okay? All you got to do is just watch that. We should not trust them any further than we can throw them, and that's my take on Huawei. I want it as far away from the United States as possible, and I'm just trying to look out for you, Jason, you know, trying to look out for my brothers and my sisters here in the U.S.
Well, keep up the good work, man, on the podcast. You're doing, unlike Lloyd Blankfein, you're actually doing God's work, and you're actually trying to shed the light on the toxic nature, let's just say, of the financial system.
Yes, and let's keep our fingers crossed that I'm not kicked off of all social media anytime soon. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast, man. I really enjoy listening to it, and I'm really happy and thankful that you brought me back on, so I appreciate it.
Please like this video, share it with friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the Wall Street for Main Street YouTube channel if you have not already done so. Thanks for helping Wall Street for Main Street pass the 20,000 YouTube channel subscriber milestone despite YouTube censorship. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to 30,000 or even 40,000 YouTube channel subscribers quickly if YouTube doesn't shut down this channel. If YouTube does shut down this channel, remember to also sign up for the Wall Street for Main Street email list that's on the wallstreetformainstreet.com website and will tell you where the videos are going to be uploaded instead of YouTube. Also, if you really like the content and you decide that you want to give a one-time donation, you can go to wallstreetformainstreet.com. That's wallstreetformainst.com website, where there's different options for you to do so. Or you can become a Patreon contributor. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to providing my loyal listeners with some of the best information, analysis, and financial education available out there, free or paid, as I work to grow the podcast and also get my educational technology company funded.